On the board. I apologize for my voice. I've been under the weather the last couple of days, but it's not going to stop us. We're going to go through and talk about net worth, and we're going to get into some pretty good topics around finances, and we're going to have a chance to dive into our own low personal finances and hopefully be able to gain knowledge and reach our objectives. Awesome. All righty. Sorry, my computer was glitching. So what exactly is net worth? So when you look at your net worth, it's going to be your assets subtracted by liabilities, and that together creates your whole net worth. So assets includes things like checking accounts, saving accounts, retirement savings, real estate, and auto. Now, real estate and auto, you have to allocate for any mortgage or auto loans you have and subtract that from it, and whatever is left over is considered your asset, but I'll talk about that later. Now, liabilities will include things like consumer debt. So I'm talking about credit cards, Amazon cards, all that, personal loans, student loans, mortgages, auto loans, and any other things that would qualify under debt. Now, our objectives for this meeting is hopefully by the end of this, attendees will be able to define net worth and understand its importance. Hopefully, we'll also be able to understand how net worth is calculated, also be able to calculate your own net worth, and then most importantly, gain tangible skills on how to increase your net worth. Now, why is net worth important? Net worth is important because I think nowadays people look at salary, and that sometimes is what they consider as what defines wealth, when in fact, net worth is what defines somebody's wealth. Because if you go somewhere, you look at someone's financial portfolio, you're not just going to look at their assets or just their salary and determine whether they're wealthy. You're going to look at their assets and subtract their liabilities. Because if somebody has $500,000 in a bank, but they have a total of $800,000 in debts, they're in a negative. So they're actually not that wealthy at all. So net worth is extremely important. And I think especially in our community, one of the number one ways we should start defining our finances and be able to gauge our financial meter to see where we're at. I know, for example, me and my husband, when we sit and we determine our financial goals for the year, we try to increase our net worth by certain percentages. So this year we want to increase it by 18%. And so as opposed to saying we want to have X amount of money saved in this account, that doesn't really do much if you have that amount of money saved, but in that process, you've accumulated more debt. So you really haven't gained much as it relates to increasing your net worth if you're also accumulating debt. So being able to utilize net worth as a barometer for your finances is extremely, extremely important. We're going to play a little game, and we're going to guess these individuals' net worth. So first, we're going to start off with Viola Davis. What do you guys think her net worth is?
In the millions?
Yeah, I was about to say millions.
Millions.
Y'all give me your best guesstimate.
Well, somebody said 3 million in the chat.
3 million? Okay.
I would say
Million?
1.2 million.
1.2?
I say 5.
5? Okay. Viola Davis has a net worth of $25 million.
Oh, wow.
25 million.
I love that.
What about Auntie Oprah? How much do you think Oprah is worth?
Billion? Like maybe 1 billion?
Agreed.
1 billion? Yeah, she's rich. So Oprah's actually 2.6 billion. 2.6 billion. What about Rihanna?
I think she might be like 800,000. I mean, 800 million. No,
800
that's, I would say maybe, no, that's too much. Maybe about 50 million with Fenty.
50. So with her releases of Fenty, which is now expanded from not from just beauty but also attire. She's also been doing a lot of endorsements with shoe companies, specifically like sneaker endorses. Rihanna, as of 2022, is worth 1.7 billion. She is actually worth more than Viola Davis, and actually creeping up near Oprah. She's a very, very, very wise businesswoman. So going back to what we were saying in regards to net worth, these are the specific pre or subcategories under the assets and the liability tiers. So again, we have the checking account, savings, retirement, real estate, auto, and then the liabilities being consumer debt, personal loan, student loan, mortgage, and auto loan. So we're actually going to go through and do an example of Josie. So Josie's a 27-year-old social worker. In her checking account, she has $450. In her savings, she has about $11,358. She is building and contributing to her 401k through her employer. And with that, she has about $9,876. She doesn't own any real estate. She's currently renting right now, so she has no real estate asset. Her car, however, is a 2013 Toyota and is paid off and is worth $8,600. Now, liability-wise, Josie has some credit card debt. So she has a Victoria's Secret card, an Amazon credit card, and somehow Target reeled her into getting a credit card through them. So all those 3 credit cards put together have about $3,200. She has no personal loans, which is great, but she does have student loans of about $58,000. Mortgage-wise, again, she is renting, so nothing there. And she doesn't have any liability in her auto loans because her car is paid off. So let's see what Josie's net worth is. It's about negative 30,916. Now, the reason that is because of the very large student loan category she has. But later on, we're going to talk about how to mitigate that and address that and help kind of increase your assets so that the weight of your liabilities are less. But just looking at Josie's example in general, it just goes to show how even something small as like minute credit cards, once you put them together and also putting together like student loans could greatly affect your net worth, right? So someone like Josie, it'd be a wise financial goal for her to try to increase her net worth, let's say by 10,000 by the end of this year. So that way she goes from a negative 30,000 to negative 20,000. Now as she continues to increase her net worth, she'll cross over into the plus side and from there on be able to build her net worth. Maybe not as high as Rihanna, but she'll definitely be building. Now I did post in our Facebook group, but this is something that I would like for each of us to do, is to kind of just go through utilizing this chart showing our assets and our liabilities to be able to try to guesstimate what our personal net worths are. I did allocate time for us to do that this evening, but I'm happy to let this be something that you guys do on your own later on. But I think it's very important, again, that we each understand where our finances are under the scope of net worth, right? So that way we could help make our goals smart, making it specific, measurable, attainable, and all that under time. So I'm not sure, I know somebody said they're driving, so this may not be feasible right now to do. What's everybody thinking?
So
No,
let me,
I'm not driving now.
Cindy, I have a question for you.
Yes.
When you have real estate and auto, are those only
do you only consider the equity in those?
Exactly. So
Okay.
it's a very good question. So let's say somebody has a home that they bought for $300,000. They've been in that home for about 10 years and have paid off $20,000 of that. So their principal, which is how much they have left on their mortgage, is $280,000. But let's say their home now is worth $500,000 because of this market. That's actually very, very, very possible. The equity on that home is actually going to be the $500,000 minus the $280,000 they owe, making it $310,000. Same thing for your car, right? So because of the way inflation is right now, used cars are actually worth quite a bit. So if you have a paid off car that's used, the equity on it could be very high. So if your car's already paid off, whatever that car is worth, that's the equity on that car. That's your asset for that car. But let's say you have a 2010 Benz or a 2022 Benz, and you went off the parking lot with it 2 days ago, you actually might be in the negatives with that auto. Hence why there's the asterisk next to it. Because it depends on what the car is worth minus how much you owe on it, or whatever the home is worth minus how much you owe on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
So that's why there's those asterisks for real estate and auto.
So I have a quick question, Jenny. So what you're saying for this exercise, we would just add up all our assets, add up our liabilities, and then subtract the totals from each?
Correct. So if you guys don't know like the exact amount, like doing rough guesstimates of how much money is in your checking right now, much money is in your savings, how much in your retirement, and then the real estate and the auto portion, and then subtracting your liabilities. That's all credit cards, every last one of them. Personal loans, student loans, unfortunately, and how much is left on your mortgage, it's like your principal, and auto loans if you have any auto loans.
So how much is left on our mortgage? How much is left on our auto loans? What the remaining balance is for our student loans? And then you said real estate, the equity in our home.
Yes. So the way you would do the assets for the real estate is just do a quick Zillow of your address. If you just type in your address into Google, either Zillow or Trulia. If you click Trulia, if you click it, it'll actually tell you what your house is approximately worth. They're not extremely accurate, but they give a good ballpark. The only way to really know exactly how much it's worth is to have someone come out.
And is that the same thing like with the auto, like doing like
so search, like for me, I have a 2014 Nissan Sentra. So when I did this earlier, so when I search how much the 2017 Nissan Sentra worth, it said it was $7,230.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question as well. I'd like to ask, what are some examples of consumer debt that are not credit cards? Would that include like if you owe for a medical expense that was never paid, other things like that? I guess when I think of personal loan, I always connect that with mortgage. So, or maybe like business, but maybe what are some examples of consumer debt that are not credit card related?
It's actually really good. That does include medical bills. Consumer debt will include medical bills. And personal loans are things like a lot of banks allow you to take out personal loans. You can even take out a personal loan on like your house if your house has enough equity, but just another category of loan that you would take out for any personal reason. They usually have really high interest rates, by the way, but that's what a personal loan would be. So like, for example, if someone doesn't have an emergency fund and Lord forbid, during COVID, they lost their job and wasn't able to pay their bills, they could go to their bank and get a personal loan. to help with like bills and stuff like that. But yes, medical bills would be included under consumer debt. Anything that you gain something out of, but you didn't pay for it, but it costs money, or you're slowly paying for it, would be considered debt. Even stuff like stuff technically like layaway is considered debt.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I was just about to ask about like Klarma, Afterpay. I'll be vulnerable and say that I do use those services.
Those are still considered debt. You have those objects, but you didn't finish paying for it. So there's still even things like I know sometimes PayPal will allow you to do pay 4 and 4, and they let you go ahead and buy it, but you still have 3x amount of payments left. Those X amount of payments you have left, the sum of that is a debt because you didn't pay for it.
Okay, this is great to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. Thank you. We're gonna take about 3 to 5 more minutes to finish doing this. I know it's a lot. Even when I was doing it, I was like, oh gosh, I forgot. Even things like, something else I want to mention, retirement accounts. I know it's not traditional for someone to stay with one job nowadays for a very long time. Things like keeping retirement account with your old employers and not rolling them over makes it very hard to keep track of. Not to mention when you turn 59 and a half or older and try to retrieve it, you have to start paying some taxes depending on what it is. And if you don't know where everything is, it's really complicated. So as you're doing this, if you find out you may have multiple retirement accounts like old employers, there's also a great time to kind of think about consolidating that into like one IRA. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the investment slide.
And again, to find out the value of your car, you recommended us just to put in the brand.
Brand, the year, and put like what is a blank model year worth. Because even things like CarMax and stuff like that, they'll tell you a pretty good estimate. Another interesting fact, I know most of us probably pay Social Security in our paychecks. It does not count as an asset, which makes me a little upset, but it doesn't count in your assets if you're ever doing like a deep dive into like all your finances. It doesn't count for liability either. It's kind of just money that's being thrown into this imaginary account that we should hopefully be able to get later on. How's everybody doing?
This is a really good exercise.
I'm telling you, when I was doing mine, I said, oh, okay, this, and after, oh, shoot, I got that one credit card.
So I guess your recommendation would be to keep your credit cards low or non-existent.
Ooh, we're gonna get to that.
Okay.
We're gonna get to that. That's a good question.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I didn't realize it. I was just talking up a storm. No, someone said that to me that, you know, you can have all this money in savings, but if you have credit card debt, it's
Mhm.
kind of useless. So it's better to pay off that credit card debt and then start, you know, putting money into your savings. So I'll be interested in knowing what you suggest.
Yes. And I'll definitely touch base on that. 'Cause it's a common misconception. And it's that I think we as human beings, we love the idea of taking in money, right? And when we go and log into our Navy Federal or Bank of America, being able to see whatever money next to that checking, that savings category, the higher it is, we get excited. And it's like, oh, I got this much money, I'm balling, this. But the reality is, our net worth is such a huge thing. If you have all that, but in somebody else's account, you owe them twice that amount, it does absolutely nothing, especially in like the realm of inflation, if you're not investing, because every year inflation is going to increase by like 7%. I mean, by 3, it's already at 8.75% now, but it typically increases by like 3 to 4%. But like stocks and investing is usually 7 to 10% yearly. And so it's like there's so many things that unfortunately I think is not taught to us in like primary education. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I am not a CPA. I am not a finance person by trade at all. What I am, though, is somebody that is extremely passionate about personal finances. Somebody that actually had a battleship with money in a sense that I was fearful of being broke, which is also not good. And in being fearful of being broke, I always wanted to see that large amount in my savings and my checking, right? But it wasn't until I got older where I realized that money's not doing me much sitting in a regular savings account, accumulating 1% per year, not even beating inflation. So it's like, it's after years of researching and listening to hours of podcasts and reading books and taking financial classes that I've been able to, and I'm still learning every single day about how to have a healthy relationship with money. So yeah, but again, I am not a CPA. Now, and as we go through the slides, I'll like refer to certain things I want you guys to honestly challenge your banks on, or get an accountant and have them be able to sit with you to tell you exactly how much money you should be investing and things like that. We're going to touch on bases and principles moving forward. So with that being said, how's everybody doing? With our little charts. How we feeling? How we feeling?
It's interesting.
Were you guys as shocked as I was when I did mine? I was like, how in the world is Rihanna worth 1.7 billion? I'm just trying to get to 100,000.
Right.
Nowhere near that. Oh, and I'm like, and I have a house. That should really be helping.
It makes you definitely think, because I never looked at it like, oh, what's my net worth? You know, why is that important? And who looks at what my net worth is? Like, we're always looking at celebrities. So that's a good point when you're like Rihanna. But then when you look at your own, you're like, really? Oh, this is what it's worth?
Like Rihanna has a dollar sign. Each and every single one of us do too.
Absolutely.
And we're just as important as she is, okay? But we're gonna move forward. So how to increase your net worth. That's the biggest thing. No matter what number you guys got when you added all your assets, added all your liabilities and did the difference, no matter what number, whether negative or positive, I think each and every single one of us should be striving to increase our net worth, to diversifying our financial portfolio, and essentially just helping create, they put things in order so that, you know, we're not living paycheck to paycheck, we're not struggling, where we can live a life of true abundance, and just being wise and good stewards of the money that we do have. Let's talk about how to increase it. So we're gonna go through, I have 6 steps here. So let's go. Step 1, build a partially funded emergency fund. Now, what do I mean by an emergency fund and partially funded? So this isn't an exact way that's gonna directly affect that liability and asset weight, but what it is gonna do is kind of set us up to be able to manipulate that a little bit, right? So if we don't have an emergency fund, there's not even room to talk about all that extra stuff. Because until we have an emergency fund of partially funded, meaning 2 months of all of our essential expenses. So we have that money set aside for emergencies only. And I'm talking about it's Prime Day and we saw the best deal on like a new blender emergency. No, I'm talking, Lord forbid, you get a flat tire, and we all know tires are expensive and you have to replace it, and it's like $500. So you don't have to dive into your budget to get that, but you have a set aside emergency fund for it. So partially funded, meaning 2 months of all your essential expenses. So if all your bills, so I'm talking your internet, your water, electric, gas, if you have it, mortgage, car payments, car insurance, gas, food, and not Chick-fil-A food, but groceries from like Aldi food, setting aside what is the cost of all that for a month, times it by 2, and that's your partially funded emergency fund. Later on, once we start decreasing our liabilities and adding our assets, we'll fully fund that emergency fund. And fully funded is always 3 to 6 months of all your expenses. So I know Nathan, my husband, and I, we finished funding our emergency fund, and we chose to go for like a 5 to 6 months of our expenses, just in case when of us gets sick. I know I'm always sick, and if we need to take time off of work, we're not like, okay, if I need to take time off of work for 2 months, is that going to drastically affect our lives? It shouldn't, because you should have an emergency fund there to be able to allocate for that. So again, step 1, partially funding that emergency fund. 2 months of all your essential expenses. Now, the other thing I tell people, and I also my friends too, your emergency fund, don't just put it like in a regular savings account. Try to put it in a high yielding savings account, like a money market account. Most banks, I know I have any Federal, have like money market accounts. They don't tell you about it. They'll just offer you that regular savings account. but money market account, there's no penalty to take money out of it, but it accrues it accrues interest at a higher rate. The only thing with money markets accounts, you have to have a certain amount of money in there. So I know Navy Federal, you have to have at least 1,000 in there. But I know each and every single one of us, 2 months of our expenses is more than $1,000. So a high yielding savings account for your 2 months of your partially funded emergency fund. That's step one. Then we'll dive into step 2, which is making a budget and living by it. Like I tell you guys, budgets are like the keys to financial success. And it doesn't matter how rich or how poor you are, everybody should budget. I can tell you there are millionaires out there that budget, and people that bring home $10,000 a year and they budget. Budgets are key. So we're gonna go through and kind of like debunk some myths about budgeting, and I'll show you guys an example budget that I actually use. All right, so myths about budgeting. I make too much money and I don't need a budget. No, again, no amount of money is too high for people to just be going around wasting and spending money. Like if you think about how much money you make in a month, and if I were to come up to you, like Shaliwa, if I were to come up to Shaliwa or Miss Deanna and say, well, where does your money go? You should be able to know the answer to that. You shouldn't be able to be like, well, I just got paid 2 days ago and I can't tell you. Maybe it went to bills. Like we should know where our money is going. Because if not, we're put at temptation of, again, spending frivolously and not realizing where our money has gone. Like I've read so many articles of actual millionaires going bankrupt. And one of the major reasons is because they don't know what happened to their money. They're just out here, private jets, living it up. And that private jet burned through fuel and burned through their money. So that's a big thing. The second myth, I don't have enough money to begin with. A budget won't help me. Complete opposite. When you create a budget, you actually take control over your money. It puts you kind of like in a power seat. Like you decide and you allocate where money is going, how it's being spent. And also in doing that, you could go back and say, so I spent this much money on this category, this much on this. So you see where your money is going and you could choose and pick places where you could actually spend less money. So you could say, oh, wow, for the month of January, I spent a whole lot of money at Chick-fil-A. Maybe let me be careful with my Chick-fil-A dates and kind of try to minimize that. Or go to Costco and get the chicken nuggets. They're like in a white and red bag. They taste just like Chick-fil-A. I think they're like $15 for the huge bag. I'm telling you guys, like being able to see that will help you think of creative ways to kind of minimize cost in that way. The third myth, excuse me. Oh my, no, come back. I'm sorry. The third myth, I know that I spend less than I earn, so I don't need a budget. Like I know I'm living below my means. Jenny, I don't need a budget. And again, a budget helps make sure that you have money put aside for things that you really want. And also, if you know you're making less than if you know that you're spending less than what you make, that extra money, you could have a tally of it to be able to decide where it should go. Maybe you actually have enough money to buy an investment property. Maybe over a few months of you actually budgeting and saving that extra money, you have enough to make a really big purchase or go on a really, really nice vacation or something like that. Like it just helps you see and be able to really understand, okay, oh, so if I only spend this much on this, I'm not someone that shops all the time. So I actually have an extra $3,000 a month. And you're like, oh, I've already maxed out my 401k. Well, take that extra $3,000 and put it into a Roth and get you some tax-free benefits, or put it into a separate like brokerage account. Like when you budget, you really kind of give yourself the opportunity and a chance to control your money and see where it's going. The fourth myth is I'm not good at math, which I think this is silly because the amount of apps and like free Excel sheets out there, you don't even need math to budget. All you need to do is be able to punch in some numbers. That's really all it is. It's honestly that simple. Like I said, I'll show you guys an example budget spreadsheet that I have, and I'm happy to send to Shalila for her to email out, or you guys could use the app and do it that way if you're like more tech savvy than I am. Another myth is that it takes way too much time to set up a budget. I'm not gonna lie, it is time consuming in the beginning. But once you put that time in, the rest every month, it's punching numbers. It's like putting estimates in. And then when you spend money, punching numbers like afterwards, once you get your statements. So it's really not that hard. It just becomes part of a lifestyle, and you can get it done in less and less time the more you do it. And it's something that's setting you up for the rest of your life. So it's honestly worth it. And then another myth is I won't be able to buy what I want. Lies. We budget, and I still love Amazon, and I still get a package about every week, but it comes out of Jenny's allowance section in our budget because we have a set allowance in our budget tab for how much money I can spend in a month. And most of it does go to Amazon. So you could still get what you want, but again, you just know where that money is going. And then it also kind of gives you a limit, right? So that way, if you have 15 things in your cart, but you know your expenses, your fund money for that month is only $400, but the 15 things in your cart equals $600, you got to take some things and put in a save later and buy it next month when you have more money. So it kind of, again, just helps you kind of control things, and being able to really, really allocate where your funds is going. We work too hard for our money just to be flying out of here, out of thin air. So this is an example of the budget spreadsheet I use. So this is actually very stringent. This is the budget spreadsheet I used when I was on my debt-free journey. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the decreasing debt. And so I created it. I'm a very visual person, so I have it a little bit color-coded. I had a verse for me to kind of motivate me when I looked at it. You could put whatever spiritual quote or anything up there that would encourage or motivate you. For me, that was like the verse that I personally cling to when I was picking up those extra shifts and trying to increase how much money I was bringing in to kind of decrease my debt. But I went through and and this was actually a template from Excel. And I just went through and like made it personalized to me and the things that I spent money on. But again, kind of like we talked about with things, a budget doesn't mean you don't have money to spend on fun stuff. Like even when I was on my debt-free journey, I still made myself a little entertainment category. I still made myself a little dining out category. It wasn't a lot of money because again, at that time I was on a rice and beans, like I was on a strict budget to try to meet paying off some loans. But you could still allocate that. And if you're not in a season where you're trying to, or where you don't have a lot of debt to pay off, then yours will look a whole lot different. There'll be a whole lot more money in a projected cost section because you're able to have that, right? Also at the time, this spreadsheet was from 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. I was doing my debt-free journey. So I had like my projected income, and I just took that money and I just spread it out into these categories. And then as I would get my statements or slide my card, every week I would look and see how much money I spent, and I'll put on there and I'll just add to it as the month went on. So it's really not that complicated. Again, it's just punching in numbers and creating specific categories for what meets your lifestyle.
Jenny, I have a quick question before you go to the next one. What was the difference? That column represents what?
I'm sorry. Oh,
Difference.
Question. Okay. So for example, let's say go down to the fuel description. So fuel, so for gas, I budgeted $100. At the time I was living in the city and working at University of Maryland, and I'll take the bus to work some days. So let's say at the end of that month, I took the bus a lot of days, or I caught rides with friends. So I only ended up spending $50 on gas. That would make my difference $50. meaning I set a budget of 100. I only actually ended up spending 50. So now I have that extra $50 to be able to add into next month's budget, right? Or I could take that extra $50 and reward myself and add it to like a fun section. But honestly, in that season, again, I was very strict on like paying off debt. So whatever difference I had, I threw it into my student loans at the time. And so when I saw it, I was trying to cut costs as much as possible. So that extra difference would just be whatever's left over. Or let's say the opposite happened and you budgeted 100 for gas and gas prices went through the roof as they did 2 weeks ago, and you had to spend 150, right? So that means you had a difference of negative $50. So you had to play around in your budget a little bit to figure out where that extra 50 was going to come from.
So then like the projected cost is what you're estimating to spend, and the difference is what you actually did, the true amount.
Yeah, so the actual cost is the true amount, and the difference was essentially how off you were.
Okay. Oh, it's the difference between. So if I budget, let's say if I budget 400 for gas and I end up spending 600, 200 would go in that column?
Negative 200 for exactly. Because I mean,
Negative 200. Okay.
out of the amount of money you're bringing in for that month, you only set aside 400 for gas.
Right.
But you're spending 600. So that negative 200 came from somewhere.
I see.
Because you're budgeting for all the money that you're bringing in.
Okay.
So that means you have to take that money from
somewhere else.
How much money was going into your savings that month, because you don't have money going into your savings. Or if you end up using a credit card, right? That means when you're making your budget for the next month, you have to allocate that negative 200 to pay.
Okay.
Because a budget, and I don't think I mentioned this, but a budget should be done before the month. So we're in the 28th day of April. Nathan and I did our budget 2 days ago for May. So we put all our projected cost, how much money we think we're gonna make based on how much money we make, like our salaries and stuff. And we made our budget and allocated how much money we have in each category. Now, as the month goes on, if I pick up extra shifts or if we spend a little bit more on stuff, the actual cost will actually happen in the month of May. But the projected cost is what we plan for to happen in the month of May. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And this is done every month prior to the.
Yeah,
every month. Okay.
And you can make it fun. You could do like a mimosa and budget brunch with people in your household. If it's just you bringing the money, it's a party of yourself. You go figure. And like I said, at the beginning half, it may seem a little daunting, but it's really just plugging stuff in. So it's like, you know how much your rent is. That's not gonna change. You know how much your student loan payments are. That's not gonna change. Like at the time, you guys could see at the time, my income was $5,000 for the month. So if you look at the total of my projected cost, I allocated for every dollar I was gonna bring in. And I put a whole lot of money. My student loan payments weren't that much. My student loan payments were like $500 or $600, but my goal was to pay it off. So I was putting $500 in my payments, and then the rest of that $3,200 was going towards principal. So you sit there and you budget it and you allocate it, and then as the month goes on, you're like, okay, so this will really happen. So this is what really happened. I don't know, and it actually becomes kind of fun. I promise you it does. And now that I'm like 3 years into doing this, doing our budget takes 30 minutes. And most of that 30 minutes is me asking for more money to go into my fun box or more money to go into our vacation section. So yeah. Don't let it scare you. I promise it's not that bad. Like there's millions of templates. And honestly, I'm so passionate about this. I am available and free to sit with anybody to create a budget. I just think it's so necessary. So necessary. All right. So now that we've partially built our emergency fund, put it in like a money market account, high yielding savings account. We got a budget going on, so we know where our money's going, we know how much money we have left at the end of the month. So now let's decrease some debt, okay? So this is really important, and this is the biggest step into kind of, we have our assets and our liabilities. This is our biggest step to decrease those liabilities, therefore increasing the asset. Because as you pay debt, not only are you decreasing your actual debt amount, but you're saving money on the interest that you have to pay on that debt, right? So it's like a double win-win. You're paying the money off and you're saving money off interest. So really trying to decrease that debt. And I understand, trust me, y'all, I've personally had a lot of debt in my life. And I understand it could seem like it's just untouchable, but you could honestly, really, you can do it. Like I've paid off over $80,000 in debt. And it just takes discipline and the dedication to it. But the biggest thing I tell people with anything with debt, always create it your smallest to largest. So usually that's like consumer debts usually come first, and then comes like larger loans, and then comes like student loans. As far as debt, mortgage is not necessarily included in debt. So because your home is considered overall an asset, typically, because your home value should increase every year, that's not one of the things that necessarily you should try to pay off quickly. It's just really focusing on consumer debts, personal loans, and student debts. Now, someone had a question earlier about credit cards. Credit cards are not bad. Credit cards are not bad. That is, a lot of people may disagree with that as far as like accountants. I know Dave Ramsey, who is someone I used to follow very, very wholeheartedly, believes no credit card debt is the best. I disagree with him there. And a lot of people who specialize in finances also agree with me, because there's so much benefits that could come from credit card. Like Nathan and I went on a trip a few months ago, and we literally paid for the trip, like paid for like a resort using our points from our credit card. Then the points paid for the whole thing. And it doesn't mean you go off and rack your credit card to get points, but just goes to show on things that you're gonna spend money on anyway, like groceries, gas. There's nothing wrong with using a credit card for it, as long as you develop a healthy relationship with the credit card, right? So like your credit card should be paid off every month. There shouldn't be a situation where you become so behind on credit card debt that it's to the point where you're paying so much money in interest, because consumer credit cards have one of the highest interest rates. And so now at this point, a purchase that's only $100 may now cost you $125 or $130. So now you're losing money. Not what we want. Not that is that going to help our net worth. So trying to pay those credit card debts off essentially before your statement comes out. Now, this part I would say to consult like a CPA or financial person about, but I'm gonna tell you what I do. So there's like a credit card, not trick or hack, but whatever. There's 2 dates on your credit card statements. Again, this is Jenny, this is not finance, all this other stuff. This is just Jenny. There's 2 dates. There's a closing date of your credit card, and then there's when your statement like is due to be paid, right? When your credit card's closing date is, you want to have the lowest amount of money for your credit card. And then by the time your payment is due, pay off the rest. The reason I say that is because the closing date is what the credit card reports to the credit card bureaus, which is how you increase your credit score. But there's usually like a week or 2 weeks from when it closes to when your statement is due. But you'll want to try to pay off the rest before that statement is due, so that way you don't accumulate the interest on it. Does that make sense?
Yes. I have 2 comments.
Yes.
First is that I went almost 2 years with no credit card debt.
Mhm.
I went from FICA of 845 down to 800 because I recognized that I was not using credit card debt. So I definitely agree with you that my score, and I was like, I can't, like my score is going down, down, down. And then I got something that said, if you were to spend $1,000, your credit score would be, let's say, 825. And I was like, wait a minute. So I'm going from zero debt to debt. So yes, you are absolutely right that I've witnessed when you're not spending anything, your credit card FICA is actually going down.
Yes, it does.
The second thing that I do is I pay all my bills electronically. So my bills pay themselves. And what I also do is my bills pretty much pay themselves every 2 weeks. So if I have a bill that's due, and I always make sure that the second payment is before the due date, but I pay all my bills every 2 weeks, so that also helps increase your credit score as well.
Exactly. It does. And I'm glad you brought up the automatic payments. Automatic payments, whoever invented it, I don't know, I need to make them some cookies or something, because it's amazing. Both in like paying your bills, but also with investments. And we'll talk about that a little bit with investments. When something is done automatically, that takes out human error, right? Our life gets busy, things happen. So if you forget something is due, and now it's a phone bill and you forgot about it, phone bill's mad, reports you to the credit bureau. Now your credit is low. You're trying to call the credit bureau and send a letter to get it decreased or get it off your credit score. And it's just a lot. But like having it on automatic payments, it helps, again, reduce that human error of us just forgetting to do it, both with investments. If you have your investments on automatic, that way your money's making money for you while you in a bed sleep. So yes, automatic payments are the way. Everything I have is on automatic. I'm telling you, everything.
Yeah, because the bills get paid first, and then you have money left over. That's how I always think about it. Like my bills are going to get before I do.
Exactly. And you always want to pay yourself, which I put that on there later too. So yeah.
Oh, Jenny and Adrian, so are you suggesting that you have a credit card bill, but you pay it totally off by the end of the month, or you pay it down?
You pay it down to the closing date, and then between the closing date and the due date, you pay it off. Does that make sense? So
your goal is to have a zero balance every month.
Most people don't look at the closing date on their credit card, but that date is actually more important than when your bill is due. Because the closing date is when the credit card reports to the credit bureau. Does that make sense? So so let's say it's May 2nd, your closing date is May 10th, and your credit card is due by May 20th. And it's May 2nd, and you owe $800. By May, what did I say, Jesus? May 10th. By May 10th, pay that $800 like $100. So pay like $700 of it off or whatever. Or do like what Adrian does and like have part of it be paid off automatically. Then whatever balance you have, which will be that $100 between the closing date and before the due date, pay the rest off.
Okay.
If that's too complicated, which for some people it is, just pay it off before the due date. Just pay the whole credit card off before the due date. Because then if you go into your next month cycle with a balance, that's when interest gets added on. Does that make sense? At that point, you're paying more money than what you spent, which is going opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to build our assets, decrease liabilities. So I always recommend using credit cards for things that you know you're going to spend money on and not for things you want to spend money on. Like Nathan and I each have, I have 2 credit cards. He has 1. We spend it on gas, food, our internet bill comes from our credit card, and car insurance comes from our credit cards. Oh, and groceries. So things that we already know, if push comes to shove, we have money for those things because those are like our necessities.
Good point. Thank you.
So that's, okay. I hope that answered the question about credit cards not being good or bad, but just how you use them.
I have a quick question real quick before you move on. And it was
So step 4, cutting expenses. So if you go through and you create that budget, you now know where your money's going. You'd be surprised where you have money going to. True story, Nathan and I were paying Microsoft Word, and we were paying, what was that thing called? A subscription for like firewall. It was like $5 a month. So we didn't really notice it. Once we sat down and did our budget, that was coming out of our account for a computer that he no longer has. So of course they were gonna call me and be like, we noticed that computer, isn't really being used. They're not gonna do that. They're gonna just let you keep spending money. And same thing with like subscriptions. We'll sometimes sign up for them, forget to like stop and never actually use it. So knowing where your money is going will allow you to really be able to cut those expenses, see how much money you're spending on like going out or going on like brunch dates, and maybe migrating those DC brunches to in-the-house brunches. So really being able to cut those expenses so that we can, again, add more money to like investments or be able to meet certain financial goals, like paying off those debts that we just talked about. And the fifth thing is taking advantage of retirement accounts. Honestly, we could have a whole seminar on retirement accounts. That's something that unfortunately I am not an expert in. I'm trying to figure it out. I know somebody said earlier they want to retire young. Me too. And unfortunately, I do not have the complete answer to that. But hopefully we'll be able to get an event out there for you guys that focuses in depth on retirement. But I am going to cover a few things. So this next slide is actually very important. If you guys can, I'll take a picture of it. And this is what Nathan and I live by when it comes to our retirements. This guy down here, little kind of funny looking white guy, he's amazing. His name's Jeremy, and he owns a company called Personal Finance Club. He is 37 and retired. And he talks about how retirement is not an age, it's a number, which it is. Retirement is a number. If you do the calculations, it's how much money you need to have in a bank / in your investments / your net worth, right? Which is all your, your liabilities decreased to be able to live off of and not have to have a continual income. That's all retirement is. But this is what he recommends, and honestly, what I believe most people believe to be the best way when it comes to retirement / like a checklist. He does have a retirement webinar that he offers. It's like $39, $40, but the best $40 I've ever spent when it came to retirement. Out of that seminar, Nathan and I were able to go through Vanguard and open up an IRA account, be able to buy specific target date index funds, which sounds like gibberish, but it's just basically a stock that we were able to buy. He teaches you how to do it on automatic. So again, it's something that's just naturally coming out of your account, but that's retirement, right? But this is checklist. I'll briefly go through it, and I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. But again, this is not my specialty. But the thing is, number one is invest in your 401k or 403b up to match. So this is through your employer. So if your employer offers a match of like 4% or 5%, you invest into that retirement account up to match. So if they put in 5, you put in 5, now you got 10 in there, right? Now the rest of money, if you have money left over, you then go into a health savings account or HSA account. And those are employer specific. I don't have it through my employer, so I don't got it. But it's usually an account that's built tax-free for health expenses. So you could use it for like prescriptions, and they're good for family. That's another good thing. So I don't have it through my employer, but Nathan has it through his. So that way it even pays like for my medical bills, right? So that's really good because it's also tax-free. But if that's not offered by your employer, scratch that, you go into a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA is income specific. I forget the exact amount. I think if you make over like 130, don't quote me on that. But if you make a higher income, unfortunately, you can't do a Roth IRA, but you can do a backdoor Roth, which is another retirement account that accumulates tax-free. But again, talk to your CPA about that one. That's a stronger or a longer process. And then the fourth one, if you still have money left over, if you still got some more money, well, amazing. do a 401k or a 403b, like a separate one, other than like the one you have through your employer, and put money into that. The the amounts in the brackets are the max amounts you can put in those type of accounts. So I personally don't meet the 100 or whatever limit for the Roth. So I have a Roth IRA. I can only put up to 6,000 for a year. That's just the max. But so that's the Roth. And then if you still have money left over, you still got money to blow and invest, which you'll know if you're doing a budget and see extra money, then you could put money into a taxable brokerage account. So that's the hierarchy on like how to invest, like generically. And then he talks about the principles of investing into those accounts, right? So choosing index funds, diversifying it, turning on dividend reinvestments, which means the money you make from those stocks, reinvesting it back into the stocks, setting up automatic payments so it's done automatically, rebalancing your portfolio. That's a lot. I personally don't do it. I just invest into a target date index fund, which is a date that I choose that I want to be retired by, and then the account self rebalances. And what that means is you have stocks and you have bonds. Stocks are risky, bonds are safe. If you're younger, you can afford to be riskier and have more stocks and a little bit of bonds. The older you get, it should go like this, right? Because if you're a lot older and you're just now retiring, you don't want a super risky portfolio because you could lose everything, and then that's not good. But the younger you are, essentially, the more you can afford to have more money in your stocks. Rebalancing it, reallocating, yep, and not selling things till you retire. He recommends that one. I'll put an asterisk about if you already are someone that's a guru in investment and you're already doing this and you're a rock star and you're maxing your Roth and you're meeting your 403b matches and stuff, and you have extra money left over and you want to dibble and dabble into individual stocks or Bitcoin or whatever fad is coming up, then you can do that. And that's where you buy and sell. But you don't buy and sell traditionally in those retirement accounts that we have listed here. Those are the ones that you just save up for. And then once you're 59 and a half, you can take money out of it. So that's investment in a nutshell. Questions? It is getting dark in here, y'all. I just realized the sun went down. I'm gonna go turn the lights on. But I will take questions while I go hit the lights.
A quick question real quick. And I think you and Adrian talked about it with the credit card thing, because I've always felt like they only want you to get credit cards to be in debt, and I don't want to be in debt. And then it was interesting when Adrian said how she saw her score go down. I've always been told, because I've never owned a credit card. So I've always been told my score won't go up. And I'm like, you just want me to be in debt. Do you have any insight in why you must be in debt in order to get a good credit score? Like, if I make a certain amount of money and I can afford to pay things, why do I need to have a credit card instead of just using my own money?
That's a good question. And honestly, they don't want you to be in debt. They want you to use the card. So you could have a credit card and use it and not be in debt if you're paying it off, right? So then you just kind of treat the credit card like a bill. So if you put your mortgage on your credit card, that's what a lot of people do. You have your money for your mortgage. You know your mortgage is going to get paid. So that way, instead of paying your mortgage to your mortgage company, you just pay the credit card every month. And you pay it off and you're still using it. The thing that's frustrating is a credit score is built off of line of credit, which is how many credit cards you have and how responsible you are with it. If they have no record of you using it, they don't know how responsible you are with it. So they assume you're bad and give you a bad credit score. So that's why when Adrian didn't use her credit card for like a year or two, they had no record to prove how good she is with her credit cards. So they're not gonna assume that you're smart with your money. Oh no, why do that? they're just gonna assume that you're bad with it and therefore lower your score.
And so your mortgage, paying your mortgage, or paying your car, paying your student loan, that's not enough. You have to have a credit card to show that you're good.
That's not enough to get you to a high credit score. No, unfortunately, it's not.
Okay.
That's why certain financial personnel like Dave Ramsey, who talk about no credit cards at all, he also teaches you how to live a life without needing credit, because your credit score will go down if you're not using a credit card.
Oh, I probably need that. Okay.
That's not a green light to go out and get 15 credit cards and start swiping. Because remember, we're talking about the credit card culture.
Okay.
Like it shouldn't be, credit cards shouldn't be looked at as free money or money you're getting from somebody else. It should look at something that you could use to put your bills or whatever on. But if you don't immediately pay it, you're going to lose money. That's exactly what it is. If you don't immediately pay it, you are losing money, because you're going to have to pay on the principal and the interest.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Now, I know I talked a lot. But I'll take the no question.
Very much helpful. It makes you sit down and want to look at all expenses.
Yeah.
And I need to save, I could save probably $300 a month just in Dunkin' Donuts coffee. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely understand. But it's just good to see, because you never want to be stuck with the question of knowing, let's say you bring home $4,000 a month. Never want to be stuck with the idea of I don't know where my money went. Like I can't tell y'all where my money. I don't know what happened. Because then it's like you work too hard for that money. You should know where every dollar is going.
Yeah, and then you have to look at different accounts, because sometimes, like I have one thing I like to do is have a bill account. So when I get paid, the money that goes to bills goes in one account. The money that I spend personally goes in another, so the two don't mingle.
Yeah.
So, but there's some things, like I just realized my LA Fitness, it goes through my personal account. So I need to adjust it, because when I get paid, I want just the money that is mine. You know what I mean? So,
right in that account.
And then you look at all the things that you spend. Like I was looking at all the expenses that you had. You're gonna send out that chart that you use, because I really would like to start using that. But then you start
the Excel sheet.
Yeah.
I'll send that.
But you realize how much you're spending on just like randoms. Like I said, coffee is on here today. So you know, if I pay myself for $50 a month or whatever, then that would, you know. So I need to look at that, because I could be spending a lot more money than I think.
Exactly. And it's wild, because it was in looking at our budget that I realized my self-care, I was spending a lot of money, because I was 2 months ago, I was getting my lashes done, and my lashes, now they don't with the prices up, that was like $125 every 2 weeks. Then my nails was like $60 every 2 weeks. Then my toes were $40. And I was looking at the budget. I said, I'm really spending like over $300. I said, sir, you married me without all those stuff. We're gonna have to cut back, because this don't make no sense for me to be spending this much money on some lashes gonna fly away, and for nails that I'm gonna want to change the color in like 2 weeks. And but it was seeing that I realized that, and because other than that, I would just kept swiping, you know, because like, you feel good.
Debt free. How do you go about, like for example, if I want to become debt free in, let's say, 3 years, how do you back to budgeting to make sure that you can pay everything off?
So perfect. So actually, I pulled up the Excel sheet on here. If you look on the bottom right side where it says debt free screen, at the time, I think the screenshot I took was a few months in, and my goal, which is how much debt I wanted to pay off, was $53,000 At the time, I had already paid off, well, 53,000, and then I was paying off. I had already set to pay off 13,000 in my monthly budget, so like a few months. Meaning my balance would be that 39, whatever the case was, 39,000. And so each month, as your month goes on, and you have your student loans or your debt category, have something over to the side that literally shows that number decreasing, or have a separate Excel sheet or a separate chart showing that number decreasing. And then once you get to your goal, you then will be able to see, wow, now before I was spending $3,200 on paying off these loans or this debt. Now I have an extra $3,200 a month.
Got you. Okay.
So then it's like, wow. For me, I ain't gonna lie. And that season, I just stopped working less.
Right.
Like my hours at work, because I could have afforded to without it messing with, the rest of my like projected costs. So I cut back some hours at work. I still had like a leftover of like $2,000. So I added more money. At the time, I added more money in my entertainment. I added more money in my shopping. I added more money, and like my money going out to eat. Because then it's like, now all that money that you were putting into paying off your debt, it's yours.
Right. Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. And
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, I heard that when you owe money that you pay well, first of all, you call your creditors and see if they'll lower your interest rate. I did try to do that. Only one like lowered it slightly, but that was fine. That was a win. But I heard that you don't look at the amount you owe, you look at the interest rate. So you're paying down the one with the highest interest rate first. Do you recommend that?
I always recommend paying off the one with the lowest amount first. And this is why. Let's say the one with the highest interest is like 18,000. But the lowest amount one is a Victoria's Secret one for like 600. The way the human mindset works, it'll motivate you better to pay off that 600 and cut off that Victoria's Secret for now, and cutting off the rest, than attacking a really large one, right? So that's always been my recommendation. Now, if you do have ones that are very close together and want a higher interest rate, of course, go for the one that's the higher interest rate. But if you have large gaps, really try to focus on the ones that you could knock out.
So maybe the lower with the higher interest rate.
Exactly. Because you're going to be discouraged. That's why I tell people, if you have a lot of debt but you have a lot of student loan debt, for example, within your student loan debt, see how many of them are like federal, how much are state, how much are in the education department, and pay the small ones off first. Like, don't try to tackle the big amount. That's going to stress you out, drive you crazy, and have you feel like you're never going to reach the finish line. As opposed to making
I can see that. And then I know, like, sometimes when I've paid off bills, I've then taken, let's say, for example, I was paying $40 a month and I paid it off. Then I would take that additional 40 and dump it onto the next bill.
Exactly. Because once you're in a grind season of paying off debt, that whatever that difference, like what Shalou and I were talking about earlier, that difference in this column, if you have positive differences, dump that into the debt to knock it off. Dump that into the debt. Because I could tell y'all, living on the other side now, not having to owe people is one of the best feelings in the world. Other than my house, because I still own my own mortgage company. But other than that, it's one of the best feelings in the world, because at the end of the day, it's like you really feel like your money's yours. I can do what I want to do with this. I don't have Sally Mae coming or breathing down my neck or hoping and praying Biden signs the next bill, which I guarantee you he's not going to do it. We are in too much debt right now as a nation. Like, we're in so much debt as a nation that they are printing money and our inflation rate has doubled. Like, it's a hot mess right now. Ain't no way Biden is going to forgive $3 trillion. No, he's not going to do it.
Right.
And so prayerfully does in the future, or it gets done in the future. But how long are we going to be waiting on somebody else to take control of our financial future? You know? So it's like, I'm not putting my finances in the hands of a white president. I'll just take control.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
handle it.
this is really helpful. I'm always one that, like, the spreadsheets really work for me because, like you said, you can see it. And when you sort of can visualize it, but you also can see it going down.
Mhm.
So it is an incentive.
Exactly. And but yeah, but I don't want to take up too much time. I want to respect everybody's time. I realize we are 19 minutes over. I said it was going to be only an hour long. See, I told you I could talk about.
No, thank you, Jenny. This was really, really good, helpful too. I was paying, look, as I'm listening to you, I'm paying off things now. So
Yes.
real time.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Yes.
But no, thank you so much.
Yes, I want to respect everybody's time. Again, I apologize for going over. But I will send this Excel sheet after she leaves so she has it. And like I said, so please, I know my contact information is on the website, but please feel free to reach out to me. Like, I am here for helping us as one, being able to win with our money. And Shalima will tell you, I am one for living life. Like, I love to travel.
Absolutely.
I love vacations. You will see me on somebody's island every 2 to 3 months, but I can do that now because I ain't gotta pay nobody else. Once I pay off these bills, and I put some money into some retirement account, I'm trying to figure out whose island I'm trying to be on half naked, you know? So, but again, I believe in you guys. This is all truly attainable. And I could, of course, I'm around to answer and help explain whatever I can explain. But please feel free to log off.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny.
Have a good evening.
Have a good
Thanks,
evening.
Jenny.
Thank you.
Great information.
Y'all.
Okay, this was good. This
Did you
was
like
good.
it?
This was real good. Oh, let me stop recording.
Yeah.
Let me stop.